Now we're going to look at the geometric introduction to the simplex method. This sort of puts together everything that we've done up to this point in time. We don't go and graph the linear inequalities or the objective function, but we sort of, in a way, put them into a matrix. So we do get back to a quote-unquote type of Gauss-Jordan. So the simplex method is used for problems with many variables, too many for us to graph, and it's usually not convenient to use letters such as x, y, and z. So instead we're going to use symbols x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, and that way we have an infinite number of unknowns. In the simplex method, the constraints and the objective function are together in a matrix, and it looks like the following. This is called the initial tableau. Notice my lines here. Excuse me. With respect to my horizontal line, these are my linear constraints. Now it says with slack variables added. We'll check that out a little bit more here in just a bit. Remember, this vertical line means equals. My objective function is going to be at the bottom of the matrix below the horizontal line. So these lines we do put in. To the right of this vertical line, all we have are numbers, or constants. Now, since it is a matrix, remember the vertical line represents equals. In order to use the simplex method, we start by changing the constraints, which are linear inequalities, into linear equations. We do this by adding a non-negative variable. We call it a slack variable. Hopefully you've heard the expression, pick up the slack. So, well, to each constraint. So for instance, this linear inequality, if you'll notice, the left-hand side is smaller, less than or equal to 16. So if it's less than, I need to add something to make it an equation. So I just call it S sub 1 for slack. And whatever it's necessary to pick up that slack, that's what S sub 1 is going to be. So it represents the amount by which 5x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 fails to equal 16. Okay? Now, a different slack variable must be used for each new constraint. We don't know what is necessary in one linear inequality, and we can't assume that it's the same amount that needs to be picked up for another linear inequality. So we just use a different slack variable. So in the following example, we're going to introduce slack variables as necessary and then write the equations for future entry into a matrix. So first thing, I'm going to look at the inequalities. We're going to change those. Now, I've got to add something to this one in order to make it an equation, and I've got to add something different to this one. So I add S sub 1 to the first one and add S sub 2 to the second one, and that's all I have to do. I now have myself an equation. Notice I've got constants on the right hand side. Again, remember the vertical line in the matrix represents the equal sign. So the objective function has to go into the matrix as well. So all terms on the right, these two right here, have to move to the left, which means I'm going to have 0 on the right hand side. Now in order for me to move these to the left, I'm going to have to subtract. So I've got to move those, and when I do, I end up with that. Always put the x sub values in front of the p. Now, we're going to put it into our first matrix, our initial tableau. First thing I want you to notice is I sort of have column headings here. So I know exactly where my coefficients with my x sub 1 and x sub 2, my s sub 1, s sub 2, and my p is going to be. So for the first one, this one right here. Here, let me move it this way. The 5, 2, 1, there is no s sub 2, there is no p. There's my equal sign, there's my 20. So see if you can do the next one. Pause me and see if you ended up with this. Okay, now notice I do have a horizontal line. The horizontal line is used to separate the linear inequalities that have been changed to equations away from the objective function, which is always in the bottom. So this right here, the negative 3 will go in x sub 1 column, negative 2 in the x sub 2. There are no s sub 1 or s sub 2's, and the p, I'll have a 1 right here. So that's my initial tableau. Okay, and that's it for this video. Thank you.